Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Fail with Fire. I am your podcast host, Phoenix Haw, the CEO of AdBeacon, my favorite first-party data attribution and optimization platform. Woohoo! I am so excited to have this series of Fail with Fire with some of really dear friends of mine, but also just badasses in the space. And our next guest is nothing short of what I just said at all. Ashton Shanks, say hi.
Yo, what's up? Good to be here.
So good to have you. I'll give my version of who Ashton Shanks is. I was blessed to hear his name prior to meeting him, knowing that he's a badass and he coined this framework in Facebook ads, which I'll let him get into. But knowing that he had this framework and it was so beautifully, methodically put together, I actually met him in Nashville at a GeekX event. And I just was watching how he was formulating and coming up with these strategies for Facebook in terms of framework. And then I had to follow up with it with a completely different framework, which is hyper simplified. But we have this really nice handshake of, I would say, respect as to how we do things differently. And there was this one really funny moment when I was up on stage and you were giving me shit about Twitter. And you're like, come on, Phoenix, why are you so late on Twitter? Because I just made a Twitter account there. And I was like, dude, I follow you. You don't follow me back.
So true. On blast in front of the entire room. And it was totally accurate too. I had no idea.
It was such a good moment though. But all right, for those of you who don't know Ashton Shanks, let me give you his official bio. He is the CEO and founder of Hemon Media Group. At the age of 24, he started one of the fastest growing direct response ad agencies in the United States, going from 0 to 11 million in under 3 years. Let me just repeat that. 0 to 11 million in under 3 years. Also 24. Insane. I know that you have spoken at Ad World, Affiliate World, Geek Out, which is the same circles and same circuit as myself, which is why we became friends. And hopefully we'll continue to grow that friendship. You have recently shifted your content to really talking about leadership, a lot of different facets of the business other than just tactical, which I really appreciate. But anyway, Ashton, welcome to the pod. We always do this thing on the pod where I go, all right, Ashton, we're at a barbecue. Your mom or a family member, your wife grabs you, says, Phoenix, I really want you to meet Ashton. How would they introduce you and what would they say you do for work?
Yeah. I'll go with my mom because I've actually heard her over the phone when she was like watching one of my kids. I was hearing in from like a security camera. And she basically was like, he travels all over the world and speaks and helps people with business. And he does fancy videos. That's like literally the entire description, which honestly, not too bad, Mom. Not too bad. I'll take it.
I'm pretty sure. So I made a joke before. My mom thinks that I listen to people on the internet or like the person that listens on your phone as to what you like and then sends ads there, even if we're that far. But the reason why we asked this question, and it really aligns with the Fail with Fire podcast, is because that our parents and the people that we love see the best sides of us and they don't give a shit about what we do.
Yeah.
And then in the world that we're in, everybody wants to know what we do, but doesn't give a shit about who we are.
Yeah.
So let's
it's completely accurate. I think that's very residence of how people operate, really, especially in the business world in and of itself. Most people are looking for a way to climb up the ladder. And the way you do that is to find tactical advantages. Whereas people outside of it have no advantage to do that. And so they don't see a ladder because they don't really care about it.
That's good. That's hopefully a taste for everybody listening in. Ashton's a deep thinker. We love a deep thinker. And I'm really excited for this episode because, you know, even the first moment that I met you and we had these conversations, they're never surface level, which I really appreciate. Surface level conversations are really tough to get through, at least for myself. And I can assume that for you. In this space, you network with so many people that you have to be surface level. But I don't like it. And I'm glad that you're here to rattle the cages. But anyway, can you walk me through, just for those who aren't familiar with your structure, you coined the term of it for Facebook ads. Do you mind?
Yeah. So high level view, we call it decentralized account structures. Namely, one of the things was when we were marketing it, it was a time when crypto was taking off, but also the concept of the structure itself was to decentralize risk within an ad account. And so there's 3 phases inside of it. The first one is really more audience focused. This involves micro testing with small budgets, a bunch of different audiences, It's since changed. I think about 7 months ago is really when it started changing as well. But this phase 2 is focused on creative, and then phase 3 is focused on campaign structures and media buying efficiency. So the whole concept was, could we turn an ad account into a scientific experiment? And inside of a scientific experiment, you have as many controls as possible and as few variables as possible in each test. And so we wanted to create campaigns that focused on variables while inserting as much controls as possible.
Hey, that was a really good synopsis. I'm here for it. Yeah, yeah. And then meanwhile, after he gave this really eloquent framework, I go in here, I'm like, okay, so there's a prospecting, there's a retargeting, and there's a fast purchasers funnel. It was just like a very dumbed down version because Shaq came to me and he was like, I need like elementary. And I'm like, okay, cool. Not knowing, because I'd never been
Yeah.
to a geek out or a geek ad. Cause I'm like, I don't know what the demo
Yeah.
is. And I walk in, I'm like, motherfucker, these guys, they've been doing it. Why couldn't I tell you all about my advanced strategies? But when Jason Akatip goes, Phoenix, thank you so much for enlightening me with ABO and CBO. I was like, you know what? Screw you.
Hey, it's ACB now, just so you know. No, just kidding.
I don't know because I don't know anything about Facebook anymore because it decides to change every minute of every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so bad. But yeah, no, I'm so blessed to know you. And I think also too, we both are Hogwarts Legacy fans.
Yeah.
Gaming. Like, so when it came out, dude, I was trying to stream it and I'm like, fuck wants to watch me like play this
Oh,
game?
many people.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a
You
gamer.
have to.
You are a wonderful father of how many?
Two boys.
2 boys. You're a dad, or a
Mm.
dad, a boy dad. There it is. Boy
Oh,
dad.
boy, dad. Yeah. Yeah.
And how long have you been married with your wife?
Going on 9 years.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Like we're like the same age and it's almost like you've done the part of the life that I'm just entering now. So I'm going to come to you for advice one day and be like, hey, how and Josh.
Yeah, I don't know how helpful I'll always be, but I'll give it my best shot.
I love it. We will always get honest with you. Speaking of honest, we do this really fun segment here before, actually, I didn't even warn you about this. Before we get into the failures, which again is a huge part of why we're here, but a lot of people look up to people like Ashton. I know a lot of people who look up to Ashton and they probably see you at the height of your career, which is now or
Yeah.
wherever it has been, thinking, holy shit, I want to be like Ashton. I
Yeah.
want to make XYZ amount of money, but don't realize that it came with a lot of heartache probably and a lot of like scrappiness. And I always like to do this fun segment of how much money did you make at your first job? And I'm not going to say like your yogurt shop job, that I'm thinking your first salary job and how juice for you.
First salary job. This was actually my first job in marketing when I was 16. It was this company that sold cell phone parts on eBay, and they grew really fast. So this was like my first massive case study that I fell into when I was a kid. And it was at this lady's garage. I'd go over after school, help package up orders that we'd sell on eBay. Company started to grow. Maybe 4 or 5 months later, there was like, hey, we should start a marketing department. Ashton, you've worked here the longest. At this point, we had moved into a storefront. They're like, Ashton, you've worked here the longest. Do you want to be our marketing director? And I had no idea what marketing was, but director sounded awesome in my title.
How
And
old were you?
I was
Wait, how old?
16 at this point. 16.
16 as a marketing director.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm top dog. And my salary was $28,000 a year. And so at that age, it was amazing. It was amazing. But actually that company, long story short, that company grew really fast. I worked there 3.5 years. At the end of it, we were doing about 3.2 million a month in revenue. And I had left after 3.5 years to go to another company to be a marketing director. And if you look up that company right now, Flash Technologies, Springfield, Missouri, or Flash Technologies, Nixa, you'll see an article from the Department of Justice on a $80 million counterfeit scheme that apparently was that company that I was helping grow as a 16, 17-year-old marketing director and had no idea.
I'm so glad you just mentioned this story because I have a counter story to that, but also the 28K. Fuck yeah. And you're probably juiced, right? You're saying like, I'm so young. I'm making 28K. I'm going to flex on everybody, buy a Ferrari with 28K.
Yeah, exactly. Like you should go to college. I'm like, I make as much as you as a teacher. Let's get out of here.
Dude, mine was 38.5 or 7. I always like fluctuate on these podcast episodes because I never remember. I don't have my pay stubs, but I remember negotiating this and I was crying. I was a server, terrible server. I remember this guy named Jonathan was like, ask for 40. And I'm like, do you think they'll do it? And so I asked for 40. We negotiated 38.5. It's my first position. And I was crying. And I'm like, looking back at it now, I'm like pennies, but
Yeah.
those pennies meant more to me
Yeah.
than whatever high salary I have now or whatever I'll ever achieve. But that's why I love mentioning it. Now, what you just said just sparked the funniest story. Okay, buckle up, Ashton.
Let's go.
When COVID hit, I was let go from a job at a brewery, which, by the way, I don't even like alcohol that much. So for me to be working at a brewery was very out of touch. I'm also a Christian. So for me to be
Yeah.
working in an industry like that, it just was hard for me because I'm like, I don't want to be around drunk people all the time. It was just really hard on my heart. And I also just used to love to party. So it just wasn't a good fit. So we got like where I got let go because of COVID. And at the time I had met this CPA that used to come into the brewery all the time. And at the time he seemed really cool. He's like, hey, let me get you a job. If you could do the marketing for my business or this tax season's coming up, be great. SBA loans were really big right then, P loans. So I'm trying to help everyone. I'm thinking, wow, SBA loans, P loans, I'm getting paid to help people. This is great. There was always some little inkling that something was off.
Yeah.
Let me just fast forward this whole thing. I think it was maybe my friend who's here today, maybe it was 6 months ago, we saw a warrant out for his arrest for some type of theft of upwards of $100 to $150,000. He basically just swindled all these people, including a friend, and just left. And then I don't even know, like he closed shop. He's a CPA, he had a practice, he just closed shop and never came back.
Just left the country
Just left the country.
for 150,000?
I think it's gotta be more.
There's
Like,
got to be more.
I
It's
think
gotta
they
be more.
only nabbed him for 150, but I'm just sitting here going,
Yeah.
dude, what the fuck? And these are your taxes, guys. Don't fuck with your taxes. I didn't want him to do my taxes because I had an inkling. But anyway, thank you. So glad that you have an article. Mine is just a warrant and a picture of his face. I took him off my LinkedIn too. I was like, I don't want anyone to know.
Yeah, it's not even attached at all. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So one day when he gets out of jail, maybe we'll put him on the Fail with Fire podcast. There's just no fire behind it, just fail. But that being said, Ashton, I would love for us to walk through a time in your life that maybe you identify as a fail and sit into it and talk me through what that time was like, what happened, and the fire behind it that became a catalyst for growth and that fires you today.
Honestly, I think if we look at a time of failure, and I wouldn't even know, there was a lot of little failures inside of it, I think that just warped into a really heavy and hard season. And I think that's realistically last year was a very difficult year. It started off essentially early in March. We were moving to Nashville to create offices here for Hemon. And right before we were moving, we had found a house. We were going to get it. We were pre-approved. Everything was good. Right before we moved, a few weeks prior to that, my wife had slipped in a restaurant, fell, broke her ankle in 3 places, and basically needed surgery. But we were about a week away from moving. And so they were saying, you can't get surgery now. If you do get surgery now, you're going to have to be here for months. So you can go, but you're going to have to get surgery immediately when you get there so that we can try to heal this thing. And one started off the bat of a massive list of expenses that we had to pay for. We couldn't take a car because you couldn't be in a car for 7 hours. Couldn't go through an airport because it was way too painful, way too much mobility. So we ended up having to get a private jet to get her to Nashville. We get to Nashville, and the day of our closing on the house, the mortgage officer goes. No idea where he is. So we go to the mortgage or the company that was selling the house and explain the situation. And basically it was you either buy this house in the next 3 days or we just keep earnest money and we will relist the house because the housing prices back then were just popping off. I think the house had increased like $200,000 by the time, like just in that short period. So anyway, I have to call like 5 different companies to try to figure out how can we try to get this loan processed. All of them say that it's not possible to get it done in that short of period of time. Eventually I find a company that the owner of the company offers to buy the house in his cash if I pay him, I think it was like $60,000 to $70,000 for doing it, and then they'll refinance the house back to me. So we get that done. In that period of time, that short window there, everyone in the house had the flu. I was throwing up like 6, 7 times a day while trying to call all these people. Our stuff is on some moving truck that we're paying like $500 a day to hold our stuff because we have nowhere to put it. And our dogs are somewhere in a bed or something. So anyway, we get into the house. We get in the house, everything moves in, we're good. She goes through surgery. That's a really tough recovery. Trying to manage our businesses while managing the kids because Ari's in bed, can't move, in a ton of pain. She didn't want to take painkillers because she was nursing. Terrible situation. Anyway, that goes on. A couple months later, we finally get an offer or do an offer where I take over another 2 companies, Traffic Funnels and Sales Mentor. And we come into those companies to basically try to revive the companies and bring them back to health and get in. And that was a total nightmare. It was a rough situation. The company had a really high expenses. We're talking nearly $1 million a month in expenses, over 100 staff members, and the revenue definitely did not support anything close to it. And so I spend the next 3 months really outside of my businesses trying to fix those companies and dealing with all of the issues of culture and changing of leaderships and rebuilding culture values and vision and all that kind of stuff and trying to improve the marketing. And the failure there, because this is the point of it, but the failure there was a lot of times when you're a hungry young person, you can lack patience in an extreme level. And you can also have a savior complex that you feel like you can fix anything. I think a lot of CEOs I talk to, that's a natural tendency that we have, is that there's no situation we can't figure out or a problem we can't solve. And sometimes that comes at the effect of things that you really care about. And so anyway, long story short, took over those companies in June. By September, realized the companies were not savable. And the only way to actually save the vision of the company was to shut them down. And right when I came in, we had to let go about 38 people. On September, when we shut down the company, I had to let go of 58 people in a day. Then coming back into my companies, actually our companies were growing and having record months. But what I didn't see because I was so out of the business was problems that were breaking inside of the company, but would take months before you'd actually figure out the problems. So when I came back in from that, shutting down those companies, coming back in, starting to see some of the problems that existed 3 or 4 months ago started coming to the surface and having issues. And so we had to do a lot of culture correction. We had to do a lot of systems recorrection. But at that time, to be honest, I had no identity. I had no idea who I was. My identity for most of my career has been around winning. I didn't know any different. We were very fortunate to grow really fast, and it was always in an upward trajectory. But last year was a year where I just looked around. I did not know what winning felt like. And then therefore, I did not know who I was. And so I had to do a lot of that correction. November, here's where the fun part happens. In November, we get hit with a letter from the FTC for the companies I had taken over of stuff that happened in 2021. And I had just gotten in time to be the CEO on that FTC filing. So that's what I've been dealing with.
Okay. Can I just say, I wrote everything down in bullet
Not a
points.
chance you wrote everything down.
I definitely made notes. Okay. Just because, holy shit, you've been through a lot and it's all written here. Let me just recap for everybody. And often when I have these conversations with my friends, I'm like, I'm so in it that I just forget of all the points and I really want us to highlight them. Okay. Your wife breaks her ankle. That's just like it's just the first thing, right? The snowball effect. And then the house almost falls through, right? I'm not even going to talk about the fact that you got a private jet, because what a beautiful blessing to be able to do that, but not to your pocket at all. I was actually my friend. Anyway, let's get back to this. Your wife breaks her ankle. Your house almost falls through. Your kids are sick. You have high expenses. You're trying to fix the companies that you just acquired. The company culture is going. You have the savior complex, which we'll definitely dive into. I think is a beautiful thing that you highlighted. Something that I saw here is that you let go of 58 people in a day.
Yeah.
That's where the deafening silence for me comes in.
Yeah.
You have mouths to feed at home, and you're going to figure out whatever way you can do that. But then the 58 people that you let go in a day, like with the savior complex and knowing that you had to do that, you have to put a hat on and go, I have to be this badass CEO / decision maker where I have to cut the bleed or else there is bigger bleed. But also 58 people, man. Ashton, how were you feeling?
Terrible. I felt like a failure. The backstory of this that a lot of people won't know is that these companies I took over, I started at that company as an intern and I worked for free for several months and then worked my way up in that company, moved to Media Bar, director of marketing, CMO. And then I left in 2020 to start my company, Hemon. And so this was a chance for me to come back and try to save the company that really I owe so much to and I really deeply loved, and a lot of the team that I deeply loved. And so I came back in to try to save that. And in a very real way, I felt like I failed them. And that was a very difficult conversation to have with people of just, we ran out of time. and everyone worked really hard. I had recruited a lot of talent to come in and try to help me save the company. When I came in, there was a lot of personnel that was not where they should have been. And so we had to let people go. I rallied a lot of incredible people to come in and help me, but it didn't matter. And that was really difficult. That was probably the hardest day.
Yeah. Number one, thank you for being so honest because it makes my heart swell when people are telling the true story, and don't glaze over what actually happened, because my job is to dig a little bit deeper. My job is to be pushy and you tell me to shut the fuck up. And then I'm like, no, thank you. You mentioned a lot about org and company culture, and behind me, so I got my EMBA behind the copious amounts of alcohol that I don't drink. This was like, when we got engaged, that was the bottle. But anyway, there's all these business books behind me when I got my EMBA, and so many of them are really fixated on company culture, case studies, org, because that is the structure, that is the skeleton behind a really successful company, which we don't necessarily like to talk about. And as people will notice, you become a really great tactician, then you could become a really great speaker, and then all the speakers graduate to a level of org. There's a reason for that, because it is so important. And people are trying to pound you, and people don't like to hear org. They want to hear a tactician, because if you continually only listen to tactician, you will only be a tactician forever.
And to be fair, there's a season for it, right? Someone who has a team of 5 people, org is maybe not really that important. And tactician is what you need to do to drive the business forward so that you can get to a place where org becomes important. I think the problem is, though, that most business owners, if you're so fortunate enough to get to a spot where your company deserves to start having org, you haven't adapted to that side quick enough. Or realistically, you haven't brought in the people who can do the tactician side as good as you so that you can focus on the org. And that's what I see mostly.
Good point. I always like to get ahead of it too, like at least have an idea of what's to come. If you do want to grow, it's not just a monetary growth structure. There's also people who are far more complex than money.
Absolutely.
It's very simple there. Not to harp too hard on the letting 58 people go in a day is, you hear the story of, I had to let X amount of people go, and then they go, yeah, that sucks, and then they move on. No, guys, you don't understand. You have to go home, look yourself in the mirror and go, 58 people. You wake up with a panic and a cold sweat. You have nightmares, because I've been there, where it's a long story, but we owed a lot of people a lot of money in the morning, right? Every day. And if you have a moral conscience, or if you have a conscience, English, then you wake up and you just feel this heaviness on your heart.
Yeah.
I'm sure you felt that.
Yeah. A ton. It's you carry the weight of it. If everyone's different, right? And we have to choose how we want to play this game. And it's something I've had to really figure out even more recently, because when I was coming back into my company, I had to figure out how I wanted to be. And you experience this too. You've probably seen this a lot too, where even inside of team where you might invest a lot into a certain staff member and then they eventually leave, right? And it could be a slap in the face, it feels, because you invested all that time, energy, money, and then they just leave, and you're like, you get faced with this question of, do I want to be a good business owner, or do I want to be a good mentor? Because if we want to play the game as a business owner, realistically, there's a lot of times in our companies where people will be in positions they do not deserve to be in from a business perspective. They don't have the experience. They don't have the understanding. They don't have the wisdom, but we believe in them and we want to invest in them. So it's that, even that question with EW, I had to wrestle with this concept of this side of who I want to be as a business owner is not just a business owner. I'm actually okay now with taking the punches and taking the hits that come my way, because I want to be a business owner, but I want to make impact on people's lives, and I'll continue to invest in people regardless of whether or not they stick around, just because that's who I want to be. With that one in EW is very much the same question of that coldness in business versus it is personal. Business is personal.
Business is personal. Love that. It's true. And you know what? I'm a testament of that. So I came in not knowing anything about paid social, didn't know anything, dove in, and someone gave me a chance. If someone didn't give me a chance, we wouldn't be having these conversations right now. Yeah. And I wouldn't be able to have the platform that it's continuously growing, that I'm blessed to even have. But it all stems from a chance. So I think I had this conversation with somebody on Twitter. I don't know, who cares? But it was a good conversation, regardless of who started it. And the conversation is, do you hire based off of potential, or do you hire based off of skill set? And I say potential every time. And he was like, I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. X, Y, or Z. I said, look, you can't teach people grit. You can't teach people hunger and passion. You can teach them skills. you can't teach people how to think outside. You can try. There's people that just are hungry and they will go and they're problem solvers naturally. If I can identify specific qualities in someone that also aligns with drive and aligns with, I would say, motivation, I am so much more comfortable teaching them skills than I am managing somebody who already has the skills that could probably potentially leave, because what do they have to learn? What do they have to grow with? And also, interestingly enough, when we start to hire in these positions, I get a little weary to hire somebody who's too seasoned, because I always say people come with bad habits and they're not willing to mold and adapt. Maybe that's just a chip on my shoulder, but it's my thought process there.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful when people start giving an ultimatum type statement where it's a mutually exclusive or it's one or the other,
Right.
because the game of business is not templated and there is no blueprint for it. And so it's both and. It's sometimes yes and sometimes no. Even the simple example, it's if I'm hiring a media buyer, most time I'll probably hire out a potential if I see they have the raw skills. They have the raw behaviors, characteristics, integrity. But if I'm hiring a director that manages 30 people, I don't really want them to play and fail and learn on 30 people if they affect others. So it's a both, and you have to figure out what you want and what situations it has and what risks and liabilities come from it. But also, like when we talk about, we are careful of people who are too seasoned because they have bad habits. I think perhaps a better way to say that is we don't like people who have bad seasoning. But if you were hired right now, you're well seasoned. You would be incredible.
Yeah, but then again, I love what you said. Good seasoning. Now I'm hungry. Yeah, I would say this. For somebody who's humble enough to know that they can grow. Every time you hire, when you're interviewing people, they're like, yeah, I love growth. I love new processes and systems. No, you don't. If no one likes processes and systems, I love change, but it scares the shit out of me. It scares me, and that's why I know it works for me. But not everybody is like that. And I think there's this beautiful humility aspect. I was speaking to Jason Active about it because there's this common misconception that he isn't humble, right? But if you get to know him, and he's going to laugh listening to this, he is very humble. And I talked to him, he's like, I always want to grow. He gives me some of the most profound advice about leadership and growing. And something he said to me that was so good, and it aligns with what we were just speaking to, is Phoenix, the people you partner with, you should probably like, and you should probably feel like you can trust them. And I'm like, okay, great. Thank you for that blanketed statement. And he goes, no, in the end, you should be able to like and trust the people you work with, because what a sad situation to be in to not. Again, so simplistic, but so profound. To your point, is like putting people in the right seats, regardless of skill set. You should say, I like them and I trust them, whatever trust is to you. Okay. To whatever degree it needs to be in that position. So I don't know. I'm so glad we got into this, because I feel like nobody really talks about it. Hiring, losing people,
Yeah.
and the impact it has on the person making the decisions is far greater than I think anyone realizes.
Yeah, and that's the tough part, right? I think one of the hardships coming from it was, even after that, as time had gone on, I would still get pinged from people who had issues from the past of even before I got there, but I just had to shoulder all of it for taking the role on, and just consistently dealing with, lack of better terms, like sins of the past father kind of thing, of just, I'm not really sure, and bearing that weight. And I think very few people will understand how much weight that actually adds to a founder or CEO, that this idea that founders and CEOs are cold, or they're about the money and it's their business and they have all upsides. People really forget that founders risk far more than any employee could ever risk to try to make a dream come true. And I would say by far more than 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 founders are actually genuinely good people and genuinely love their team and want the best for their team. And at any time they have to make a decision for anyone, we understand how much of a life change it is for our team. And we know that weight, and it's even more difficult for us.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Back in the day, I think we're around the same age. Let's pretend that we are. And I grew up with my mom. I watched my mom do business, and then I watched a lot of TV anyway. And a lot of this the concept of what a boss is, right? Cold at the time of my generation, right? I'm about to be 30. So I'm right on the precipice of a lot softer media now in comparison to what we did before.
Yeah.
Shows that we watch back, better back. We're like, oh,
None of them would last today. They'd
none of
still
them.
be canceled.
Part of me wishes they would just because they're so funny, but yes, they would be.
100%.
But this concept of a leader was always cold, brash, and argumentative. And that's how you got your way. And that's how you demanded respect. And I quickly realized as I grew up, that's not the case. And as I started growing up, I started watching, I would come into these positions craving mentorship, craving some form of what should a leader be at this level. And when I was at these companies, brands, I was often let down. And I realize now on the other side of it, that it was my ego. It wasn't them. I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't understand what to watch for. I was in employee mentality. So I firmly believe there is an employee and there is I just call it boss for watered down terminology, right? There's employee and boss mentality. If you're a boss, you don't ask the really small questions, the small needle movers. You ask big questions. What's going to generate the most amount of growth in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of funds? Okay, done. And employee mentality is going, Susie's being a bitch today. I don't want to deal with it. And nobody gives a shit that I worked 3 hours overtime this month. It's not usually that mundane, but like just some context. So when I was in employee mentality, I would look at CEOs and go, wow, they're so fucking lazy. They never come into the office. They never say anything tactical. They probably don't even know what's going on. I don't know if you ever felt that way as a young kid. Yeah.
Sometimes even now. We get to work with a lot of businesses sometimes. So you're just like, oof.
Now I want to challenge us, young 16-year-old Ashton Shanks and me. I was a 23-year-old interim marketing director who had no fucking clue what she was doing, still always figuring it out. Going, are you asking the right questions? Because people don't often fall into these positions on accident.
Yeah, very true.
Just a gut check there. But anyway, I want to segue over to one of my favorite segments, which is called Hot Takes. We love a little drama. We love a little hot seat. Ashton, what is like a hot take for you right now?
I think TikTok is the worst advertising platform there is.
Dude, I so disagree with you. I'm gonna fucking light you up. Are you ready?
Do it.
Buckle up. You can take it. I know you can. Are you talking about paid advertising or organic or just TikTok, the platform in general?
Paid.
Okay.
If we're talking platform in general, I think it's a terrible platform to society and humans in general. And it should be removed from the face of the earth. Absolutely. But from a performance standpoint, paid.
Okay. Paid, I agree. Paid, I agree to a certain extent. Organic, I do not. Okay. So, little story time for you, Ashton.
Now, are we talking performance or are we just talking value of a platform itself?
No, I give a shit about value of a platform itself. I'm not on the board. I don't care. Value of a platform. No, I don't firmly believe that TikTok has anybody's best interest in mind other than TikTok. But I also don't think that Facebook has anybody's interest in mind other than Facebook. What are we really talking about here? Apple's another thing. My friend works for Apple. She's one of my bridesmaids, and I give her shit all the time. Like, you gave me a career because of 14.5. Thank you. But also fuck you. Because you guys are pretending like you're not creating your own ads platform, utilizing all the devices that everybody's on. And for all of you who think that you have some type of data privacy to any degree, you're shielded because you're on an Apple device. What's going to tell you that they don't have access to this? What, legal? You're joking. But anyway, back to TikTok. So during the pandemic, when I was unemployed, I sat there and was like, what the fuck am I going to do with my time? So I went through a knitting phase, I went through a bread making phase, and I went through a TikTok phase. And in the TikTok phase, I did this one video about grapefruits. Went viral, 1.1 million views. Dumbest thing of my life. Continue it. Still kept going viral. Okay. Nothing moved from that other than, I guess, followers. Fast forward, I went, okay, I'm an advertiser. Let me try something different. So I looked homeless in my bathing suit, go to my freezer. There's these alcoholic popsicles I grabbed from Target one day. So I was like, oh, what are these? I guess I'll try them. I grabbed them. I recorded myself eating them. I barely even talked about the value props. I didn't. It was so quick and easy, but it was native to the platform. Instantly sold out the popsicles at every Target in the United States.
Wow. Wow. That's
Did I
incredible.
get a dime of that? But I got the clout, Ashton. So let's try it
Incredible.
again. Let's try it again. Coconut yogurt. There was this probiotic coconut yogurt. Tried it, ate a bite of it, sold out. Not a dime again. However, they had to get 3 times, like 3 different facilities to make 3 times the amount of coconut yogurt to.
Wow.
This is a small company that just monumentally, exponentially grew because of the power of TikTok.
Yeah.
The idea that discovery is something that, let's just say, Ashton Shanks does not want to be served ads anymore because we have a much more sophisticated demographic now that understands what an ad is right off the bat. So if something is organic or a discovery piece, then they're more likely to have brand equity, validity, and trust, and they'll go for it just based off of a review. And this happened multiple times, Ashton. So I don't think paid is the best because people know that it's advertising on TikTok, but native and organic on the platform kills.
Absolutely. From a performance side, organic kills. From a
Okay.
paid side, I haven't seen a brand be able to do it. Not at scale.
Fair. All right. My hot take for you. Let's see.
Let's go.
Hmm.
I object. Oh, sorry. Too soon. Too soon. Sorry.
My hot take is sitting in the back of a classroom at a conference, even if you don't have anything to learn from it, or not, I wouldn't say that. Sitting in the back of the classroom, sitting in the back while a friend of yours is speaking is the most, I think, disrespectful thing to do. I've caught myself doing it a few times.
Yeah.
But I think it's wrong. And I want to check us.
I love that hot take. Yeah, I think I've fallen into that too, mostly like standing in the back. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. It's, I think also realistically, like just people have to learn how to support each other better. It's just, there's clicks. I see clicks inside of the internet marketing industry, which is fair. And there's advertising communities, very clicky. But I've also seen a lot of gossip and people talking behind other people's backs or trashing on other marketers when they're clearly marketing. And it's just, there's so much just fight, but then everyone smiles to each other's faces.
Gross.
The support is just weak. You got to do
Let's
better
just
at
make
that.
it known. We hate everyone. I hate everyone equally. So if we're going to talk shit, let's talk shit openly. But yeah, I agree with you. I went to Affiliate World and Van said something really sweet to me, Van Oaks. I said, thank you guys. Okay, so let's talk about the power of supporting each other. Okay, there's also, remember back in the day when we were in high school, if any of you went to high school, and there were like, everyone has a clique, right? And if you watch Mean Girls, you have one table that is like the jocks, the geeks, the nerds.
Yeah.
I never had that. I was never
Yeah, same. I also had a friend in almost every clique.
Exactly. That's a master networker. Why? Because you choose your friends. You don't feel obligated to be within a group, and you get to be cool with everybody. You get a flavor of all, and it's like a mutually beneficial agreement of, hey, you got me, I got you, we're good. Okay. Now let's take it back to like applicability in today's world as adults. So we're at Affiliate World, and I'm sitting at as many of my friends or people that are speaking at the front row, always just listening because I just want to, I want to learn, but also I thought to myself, if I were to be up there and I look down and I see a familiar face, just like you see mom or dad when you're like performing, wouldn't you feel better?
That's beautiful. I love that.
It was just like this weird little small click. And I got up there on stage, Ashton, I almost cried. I got up there. It was my turn. It's my first time being on main stage at Affiliate World, Dubai. I go there, and in the front row, Van Oaks, Nick Shackelford, Jordan Menard, Jason Akatif, Sean Mulkeen, Sarah Lamine, like all these heavy hitters, Dot Lung, Mark Joyner. I'm like, what the fuck? It has never been done before. And Philip Schofman, who is he comes up there, he stops the whole thing. He goes, I just want everyone to know this has never happened in Affiliate World history.
Wow.
All of the main stagers are at the front row. I talked to Van about it after. I was like trying not to choke up because I was like, I'm a newbie, guys, just to let everybody know I'm new. So I look at Van and I'm like, dude, that was so nice that everybody did that. He goes, you did it for us. Like, why the fuck wouldn't we do it for you? Nobody does it anymore. So I don't know, that kind of changed my perspective, Ashton, like in the place that we are. Again, comes back down to humility and being a good person. Let's just do better.
Yeah.
Cool moment.
Amazing. I can't add anything to that. I think that's the best way to put it. You look at everyone. The coolest thing about that the internet has provided us is an insanely easy path, relatively, to get what we want and to actually build a life that we want. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, for most of us, we were nothing. We had nothing. And now we've got to grow to a great place. And I think if we can remember that when we look at the people around us, it's like we all just worked really hard to get where we are. That at least we can all have that in common.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's not a hot take. It's just a truth moment, a truth bomb that Ashton just dropped on us. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll round it out. I always ask this question because I teach at a university and these kids are coming out demanding like so much, 85K off the bat. And remind yourselves, guys, he was 28. I was 35, 38.5. But then again, like I understand inflation, guys. I'm not unaware. However, if there was a piece of advice you could give somebody that just graduated university or just coming out of high school, doesn't even want to go to university, what would you say to them?
If it was distilled down to one thing, it would just be play the long game. You have to stretch your time horizon. And if you can be everything you want to do, if you can be okay with it coming in 10 years, but it was guaranteed in 10 years, would you do it? I'd say if no, your vision might not be big enough. If it is a yes, then if you get a year or two into it and it gets hard and you don't have what you want, then just keep going. You're good.
The heart feels, man. Ashton, always bringing in the heat with the good, deep. Thank you for that. And thank you for being on the podcast. Where can people
Absolutely.
find you? I'm always going to put the handles at the end because we have it on
Sure.
YouTube as well. It's an Apple Podcast and Spotify. It's a video podcast as well. But that being said, where can people find you just out of your mouth?
Instagram is probably where I post most of my like video content at ashton.shanks, or Facebook is where I do longer form copy. I am such a struggle on YouTube. I'll be there eventually, but you won't find me there now.
It's tough, man. I barely touch YouTube. It just organically happens. But again, just a heads up, Ashton will not hit you up for money or crypto.
Yeah, or crypto. Apparently I'm killing it on crypto, apparently.
I get so many fake Van Oaks and Ashton Shanks profiles, Lauren Tickner's too. I'm sitting here going, no one's made a fake profile of me. I got to work harder. Jeez.
You don't want that struggle.
Well, Ashton, I'm so appreciative that you're on here, and I'm sure the listeners took a lot from what you said. So thank you again, and I hope I get to see you on stage soon.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Phoenix.